ReverseReverend here with my review of the newly released Rurouni Kenshin Hokkaido Arc Chapter 1. Or I will be reviewing it after I go through a few things first. So I've been reading the Jinshu arc, the arc with Inishi, and it's longer than I expected. I've read about half of it prior to reading it now, but I never actually finished the entire arc. I did want to finish it before doing this video, but that would have required me to push this video to next week, and so I've decided I'll do a series review slash overview slash analysis of Rurouni Kenshin sometime next week. So as for my knowledge of the series as a whole, I've seen the movie on Kenshin's backstory. It was like Trust and Betrayal. I think there's two, maybe three of them. I'm pretty sure I've seen Inishi's battle with Kenshin and the manga ending in an OVA. But I'm going to go way more in depth about Inishi and the final arc after I finish my read through, as well as a little bit of a look at the anime filler, or as much of the anime filler that came after the Shishio arc that I can stomach. My list is going to kill me with Shishio. I'll also go over the necessity of the Hokkaido arc in the next video. I'll do all of that pretty in depth, and I'll give my analysis and kind of a elongated opinion on it. For the time being, I'll give a brief summary of my opinion on this arc and the fact that it's even being written, why I don't mind it at this current moment, and I'll go over a brief backstory of the new characters who were in the Ashitaro spinoff. This review discussion is probably going to be pretty lengthy compared to just like a weekly shonen chapter review, so I'll add annotations so you can jump to the backstory, the rundown, and the discussion portions as you please if you don't want to hear the rest of this, or if I just end up being horrendously boring. For my brief summary about my feelings about this arc and why I don't mind it, I love Rurouni Kenshin. I grew up with it. Rurouni Kenshin and Yu Yu Hakusho were like the main anime that I watched growing up as a kid on Toonami. I'm sure a lot of you watched it that way as well. And I really liked it, and it's one of those things where, you know, you can go back and watch some Pokemon stuff or Digimon or Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're like, this doesn't make sense, this is terrible. But I've gone back and I've watched Rurouni Kenshin, I want to say at least 4 times, and it's still one of the best series. It's still really well written. The anime, the English version of the anime is amazing. All the voice actors are fantastic. And so that's one of the reasons that I like this arc, because it's Rurouni Kenshin. I just love this series. I also trust Nobuhiro Watsuki. I know he had another series that he did that was somewhat big. It wasn't anywhere near as big as Rurouni Kenshin. He did it after Kenshin ended, and some people are thinking that because that series wasn't as well received as Kenshin, that he's deciding to come back and do a money grab for this. And I don't necessarily believe that. It may end up being true, and it'll probably be pretty obvious, which I'm really hoping it won't. And again, I trust Watsuki because of how great of a series Rurouni Kenshin is and how great his characters are, and the fact that he's mentored some of the best current mangaka out there. He was a mentor to Eiichiro Oda. In the Jinshu arc, there's a cannonball, I think, with a Straw Hat Jolly Roger on it as a ode to Oda, or a tribute to Oda's new series at the time. He also mentored the author of Shaman King, I don't remember his name, and the fact that he did this great series. His other series apparently wasn't bad, you know, it could match up to what this was. But when you do something so monumental like Rurouni Kenshin, like Naruto or Bleach, or One Piece, regardless of how you feel about those other 3 series, it's really hard to do something else and have it be as successful or be as good. The only other example that I can think of, especially in the manga world, would obviously be Yoshiro Togashi and Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter. And I personally still prefer Yu Yu Hakusho, but we'll get into that later. So the other thing I don't mind about this new arc is, and I'll try and link to the interview, I think it was on Reddit, a Hokkaido arc was originally planned to come after the Jinshu arc, but Watsuki kind of had gotten tired of writing Rurouni Kenshin. He didn't really have the ideas or storyboard to put it together at the time. I think since the series started in the 90s and ended, I think, in the 90s, I'm pretty sure it ended like in 99. I'm not exactly sure. I might add annotations, maybe not. But anyways, so at the time it had ended, and he did his other series. He had the Shishio backstory, which I'm not going to get into in this video, I thought about, but again, this video is already running a little long, and I haven't even gotten into the review portion. but I'll do that in my upcoming video as well. So he hadn't really done a lot. It's not like he's coming back and just adding on all this stuff. It's like it was an idea that he originally had. It was a Hokkaido arc that was planned, and then he just kind of lost the motivation or ideas to do it. And now I feel like maybe looking back on the series, I kind of went through and tried to do these other things. I really do think there's a good way to do a Hokkaido arc, and I want to try that, and I want to put it together. And again, I trust him. It's not like something he came out of nowhere and he's like, a Hokkaido arc, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe that's part of it now, but it's not like it just came literally out of nowhere. So I'm going to have faith. Last portion is, while the Jinshu arc, more so than the rest of the series, touched on the westernization and opening up of Japan to the world, I think the Hokkaido arc can really expand on that. And since westernization is such a huge part of the Meiji era and Japan opening its borders and allowing other cultures in and no longer being the isolationist country or being as much of an isolationist country as it was, I really think that this arc can really put it in perspective. Because even though Rurouni Kenshin is obviously a shonen manga and it has a lot of crazy things that are not realistic, it's like a parallel version of reality where we still see into some of the ideas and the ways of the past of the Meiji era and the end of the Edo era. And like I said, I haven't finished the Jinshu arc, but I do know Inishi went to China. He's taken part in more westernization than a lot of the other characters. From what I remember and what I've read so far in my reread through, it still is just barely touching on it because it's only 18 years into the Meiji. The Meiji era lasted from around the end of the American Civil War to right before the beginning of World War I. Like I said, it came after the Edo period, which had lasted about a quarter of a millennia, and it's changing from feudal and isolationist era to an opening up of the borders to a westernization of Japan that it continues to go through even today. After it comes the Taisho period, and then that leads up to right before the beginning of World War II, if I'm not mistaken. Don't worry, I totally didn't read most of this stuff from Wikipedia, but I would like to see this really expounded upon in the arc, and I think it's making lots of good hints and odes towards this conflict in Japan at the time. Finally, let's get to the review. Well, sort of. Give me 30 seconds, a minute, to give you the brief backstory of Ashitaro, one of the 3 new characters from this spinoff that are important to this plot. If you did not read the Ashitaro spinoff, part 1 and 2, which are free on Viz's website, then go read those before you read this chapter, or it's not going to make any sense. It was a spinoff, but it was written entirely by Nobuhiro and his wife. Anyway, so the spinoff is basically about Ashitaro, who's a criminal. He gets released from prison, meets up with this half-Japanese guy, Aran, who was in trouble for trying to smuggle himself to escape to America, as half-Japanese people were discriminated against. So, he wanted to get away and not be seen as this foreigner, even though he's half-Japanese. They're met by Asahi, who's a member of a rebel group that is part of multiple groups that have formed from the fracturing of the Jupon Gatana. They don't mention it by name, but it's very obvious that it's Shishio's group that had split after he was defeated. They don't mention his name, they don't mention the group's name. Asahi is working for one of those factions, and she confronts Ashitaro looking for his treasure. We find out the treasure that Ashitaro didn't know was a treasure is Mugenjin, which is Shishio's old sword, Shishio's old army. The fragments that are left are looking for it, the sword that belonged to the demon himself. Asahi was trying to get the sword peacefully. One of her allies, or someone she's working with, comes. The guy attacks Ashitaro, he beats the guy, and he goes and retrieves the sword with Eren. He didn't know what it was worth, but they decided to end up selling it so they can get something to eat. There's a whole thing about Ashitaro's desire to eat is very similar to Shishio's the strong live and the weak die type of mentality. We get a flashback that Ashitaro was also a former member of Shishio's group. He was an intruder trying to steal food from one of his hideouts. He was captured. Again, like I said, he had a similar ideology to Shishio, who tells him he's going to make him the 11th member of the Jupon Gatana. I don't know, it would be the 11 Gatana. I don't know what 11 is in Japanese. We see in the flashback he kind of wakes up, and then we find out that Shishio is saying if he doesn't become stronger, he's just going to be a weak scavenger brat for the rest of his life. To be honest, I thought it could have been a better quote or like better reasoning from Shishio, but they then end up confronting the leader, seemingly, of Asahi's faction after they tried to sell the blade to some rich guy or kid. I can't remember if he's from previously from the series. It's hard to tell. He looks kind of familiar, but I'm not sure. Regardless, he's friends with Kenshin. Ashitaro fights the leader of Asahi's group. He's finally able to draw the Mugenjin from its sheath, despite it being old and rusted and kind of stuck in the sheath. Before he can fully draw it and attack, Kenshin stops him and defeats the gang leader. Eren and Ashitaro end up at the Kamiya dojo. And that's where the spinoff ends. Okay, for real now, we're at the review. This is the actual review of Rurouni Kenshin's Return, Chapter 1 of the Hokkaido Arc. Let's go. I'll start this review like my others, go through the blocks, but since it's a monthly chapter, it's longer, and thus the rundown of the blocks of the story will be longer, and the discussion is going to be longer. The story starts 5 years after the end of the previous end of the series, so it's 5 years after the end of the Genshu arc and the epilogue. Kaoru is seen praying to her father, who was killed in the Satsuma Rebellion 6 years ago, which is, I think, a year prior to the end of the original series. We find out that Eren, he's called Alan in the manga stream dub, which probably makes more sense because he's half, I think, American. He's at least half white. But Eren is the name in the official dub, A-R-A-N, in the official Viz dub, so we'll go with that. Eren gets the manual to the Kamiya Kashin techniques by bribing Kenji, who is Kenshin and Kaoru's son, with snacks. There's this comedic portion where he challenges Yahiko, who's now the assistant dojo master, and Yahiko beats him. And then Tsubome, who I'm pretty sure is Yahiko's girlfriend. I don't know if they're still in a relationship. If I remember correctly from the end, they do get together, but I don't think they're married like Kenshin and Kaoru. Tsubome shows up. She's from the Akibento. I'm going to call it the Akibento store, and if it's incorrect, I'll correct it in the next series because I have it written down as Akibento, or Akibento restaurant. I'll call it that and then correct it later on if I need to. So Eren tries to flirt with her, and then Yahiko attacks him again. We end up skipping forward to a restaurant. I don't think it's the Akibento. And Ashitaro is causing a fuss. He runs into Asahi, who is apparently working there, and congratulates both of them for leaving the rebels, because I don't know if they knew of each other while they were both in Shishio's group, or if they only found out about each other once they split after Shishio was defeated. But we find out that she was raised by the family that owns a restaurant, I think. It seems like it was a family that owns a restaurant. We don't get a ton of explanation about them this chapter. She had been sent by the family to work for Shishio, and while working under him, she had saved up 200 yen to buy her freedom. But it turns out Ashitaro cannot read, which is relevant because she cannot read, and reading, or being unable to read, seems like it's going to be a consistent plot point throughout this arc. But anyways, the point being, she can't read, so when she heard that her freedom was 200 yen, she finds out that it was 200 yen to rent her, I guess as like a mercenary or possibly something else, and it was 2,000 yen to free her. And she's like, no, but I heard it was only 200 yen. The lady's like, no, it says right here that it's 2,000 yen. Too bad, so sorry. Ashitaro had gotten hit when he was talking to her by the guy with his weird sword baton thing earlier. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but this isn't super important. There's only fragments of the scene that are important, and it's already a really long review. So Ashitaro, after she says she thought it was only 2,000 yen, they ask Ashitaro what he thinks, and he says if she says it's 200, it's 200. And then, like I said, the guy hits him again with his sword baton thing, whatever it is. The older lady, who's seemingly one of the elders of the family, says they have another job for her. And even though they didn't teach her to read, they did let her be a mercenary and work for them, or work under them. Asahi says she doesn't want to do that anymore. And again, the guy who attacked Ashitaro is like, you're an idiot, and if you can't even read, you have no reason to choose how you want to live. After the guy insults her, Ashitaro attacks him, and he tells the guy he's not going to stand in his way anymore, and then he's not going to stand in the way of Asahi anymore. These two people, the older lady and the guy, kind of just show up out of nowhere, so I don't really know where they're from. I don't think they're from anything we've seen previously. It seems like they may have a past with Asahi and Ashitaro, but I'm not sure. Anyways, after that, after he attacks him, we jump ahead, and apparently the police heard the scuffle. They come in, and Ashitaro then ends up fighting the police using his sheathed Mugenjin, much like the confusion of like who these two people were and how they know Ashitaro and Asahi, and how exactly Asahi and Ashitaro know each other or when they met prior to Ashitaro getting out of jail is a little confusing. But this other part is also somewhat confusing. I'll show the panel that makes it confusing in a second. So Kenshin jumps up to stop Ashitaro, who's fighting police on the roof. He blocks Ashitaro's attack with what seems like a bamboo sword. The force of Ashitaro's attack and the counter cause the Mugenjin to cut free from the sheath, and along with Ashitaro's rage at seemingly not wanting to be sent back to jail, he's able to produce the flames of the sword like Shishio did. Kenshin avoids the attack, but his bamboo sword burns. But when you look at the panel as it's burning, it looks kind of like it burned the sheath of an actual sword and melted the blade. So it's hard to tell if it's actually a bamboo sword or if it's actually a regular blade. If it's a regular blade, it's confusing because of what happens next. If it's a bamboo sword, then it just might be not the best angle to show it. So Ashitara then uses the secret technique Homuradama, which this part of the chapter, even though it can be explained, could end up being a bad thing. As much as I love Shishio, I don't need a Shishio 2.0. We'll get to that in the discussion portion of the chapter. Kenshin then grabs the reverse blade from Yahiko, who he gave it to at the end of the original storyline, and he defeats the attack and Ashitaro with a Soul Ryusen. Then Ashitaro wakes up. Kenshin said he's glad he's okay, though he held back as much as he could. Ashitaro then asks for his sword. Kenshin then lectures him on his passion and rage that he doesn't control that well, and then gives him back the sword in a new sheath, or at least a new wrapping. He then thinks about Ashitaro having the possibility of becoming a more evil successor to the Mugenjin than Shishio, which again could be an issue, and we'll discuss that once we get to the discussion portion of the chapter. Turns out Asahi had talked with Kaoru and she will now work at the dojo. Ashitaro then mentions that she can't read. I mentioned earlier illiteracy of her and Ashitaro is going to be some type of consistent plot point. We'll see where it heads. Aran says he'll teach her, and then she's happy that somebody's actually willing to take their time and teach her. We get a quick cutscene in the group. Kaoru says, despite Asahi not wanting to reveal her past, everybody has things in the past they don't want to talk about, but they don't have to bring it up. They can start a new and happy life. We then see Kaoru with the note package that Asahi, I think she had it when she was talking with the old lady and now I keep saying old guy, but he was like the younger, like maybe mid to late 30s guy who was part of the family that she was working with. Anyways, Asahi had it with her, but she says it's not hers. Yahiko thinks it belongs to the other two, who we find out apparently fled. Hopefully we'll get more information on them in the coming chapters. They open up the package, and it's a photo of a man with a goofy expression and like the okay sign over his eye. Kaoru sees him, freaks out, and yells out, "Father." Turns out it's her dad. On the back of it is written a note about the 16th spring in the Meiji era, Hokkaido, which I'm thinking is a prefecture in Hokkaido. Anyways, the picture is taken in Hokkaido, and then the name Koshijiro Kamiya, which is Kaoru's father, is on the photo. So it's obviously him. And then we have Kenshin questioning how a guy who supposedly died in the Southern War ended up alive in northern Japan. He then thinks that something must be keeping him there, or else he surely would have returned home. Kaoru then calms down. It's like they can wait to go see him. Kenshin then steps in. It's like, hey, let's go meet him. Obviously, he thinks something's up, but he, of course, does want to pay his respects to his father-in-law. Kaoru wants her dad to meet her husband and her son. We then jump to Hokkaido, and I think it's the military. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the military because they talk about the police separately. Are there to take out rebels who reside on a mountain in Hokkaido, in this prefecture of Hokkaido. I think it's a prefecture. I don't know. There's a lot of corrections I'm either going to have to add to the annotations or to the graphics in this video, or just to a later video, depending on how lazy I get. But they're supposed to go take out this group of rebels in the mountains, and they complain that's supposed to be the police's job, but apparently a police squad was sent in early and they were wiped out. However, the police did send backup. Who was that backup? Hajime Saito. Again, one of the reasons that this series is so good. Kenshin, Shishio, Sojiro, Saito, Sanosuke. Just so many amazing characters. Hajime Saito's back. That's kind of the end of the chapter. We do find out that the next chapter doesn't come out until November. So that's how it ends. Hajime Saito is back. He's obviously going to have an interaction with Kenshin. Kenshin says that they want to go meet Kaoru's dad, so we know they're going to head to Hokkaido. So we've got quite a few things to discuss, but we'll try and get through the discussion really quick. Kaoru's father, I'm not sure if he was really mentioned in the previous portion of the series. I think he came up once or twice, but we see in the beginning she's praying, and he died in that rebellion that apparently was in the south, but we now see that he's alive in the north. We don't know why it was said that he died. We don't know why he's taking a picture. It seems something is keeping him there, and then when we hear about the rebels in the north at the end of the chapter, I think that's going to relate to why he's still stuck up there. And so there's not really much to expand upon that, except for the fact there's a lot of interesting questions that come out. So while I like Ashitaro, I am worried about him becoming Shishio 2.0, because you don't just duplicate Shishio. Like, he was a villain unique to himself. I understand the idea of, I don't mind him becoming a successor. Like, I hope Yahiko or Kenji becomes his successor to Kenshin. They were kind of supposed to do that, or it was hinted towards it at the end or the epilogue of the previous end to the series. And I should get into that in the next video. But I don't want him to be Shishio 2.0. I don't mind him inheriting his will or his drive for power. But I definitely hope Watsuki makes sure that he's not like a carbon copy, a slightly different expression of Shishio. That's something I am really worried about. I think he's with Kenshin. I don't think he's going to become evil, but I am a little worried about him. I do like that he has the Mugenjin. I do like that he can be a successor to Shishio, because we know that Shishio was technically a successor to Kenshin after Kenshin stopped being the Batosai. Even though he wasn't really trained like Sojiro was, or seemingly he wasn't trained like Sojiro was, the idea of someone who carries the will of Shishio as Yahiko kind of carries the will of Kenshin, or he's supposed to. I think that's good to have those two parallels. We'll have to see how he develops in the next several chapters and see if he starts to deviate from Shishio. Next, we have Yahiko handing over the reverse blade sword to Kenshin to counter the Mugenjin. Since Yahiko did inherit the blade, I was a little disappointed that he didn't step in and stop him, because again, since if Ashitaro is going to inherit Shishio's will, Yahiko should be inheriting Kenshin's will. We've already saw him in the Shishio arc, and again, I'm not caught up on the Jinshu arc. He learned the Hiten Mitsurugi style technique by himself. I would have liked to see him step in and stop it. Since he didn't, I'd like to see him become more prominent as the series goes on, because supposedly Kenshin's body is going to deteriorate because it's not made to use the Hiten Mitsurugi style like he did. So I would hope that Watsuki is consistent and Kenshin starts to show signs of weakness and deterioration, and Yahiko can take over for him, or starts to at least push to take over. It doesn't have to be immediate, but I would like to see some more continuity. I don't want him to kind of be like, oh, Kenshin's fine now. He's not going to get hurt until the end of this arc, or he's not going to be disabled to the end of this arc. I would like to start to see some limitations on him. Not much to say about Iran this chapter. He's more of a side character right now. I think he'll obviously be more important, and he'll have a more serious role as this arc continues. I want to know more about Asahi and Ashitaro's relationship in their past. I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier. And who this family is that fled. Like, I want to know who that guy was and who that lady was and who their connections are. But I would like to know how they ended up having her work as a mercenary for Shishio, where they fit into the story. Related to that, how Asahi had that note and that picture of Koshiro Kamiya, what he's doing, why he's up north. Again, I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. I think it's interesting, but it's hard to speculate on a lot of that right now. And then we get to see Saito and the rebels in Hokkaido. I would like to see Saito in action, but I would like to see the rebels or whoever the main villain of this group end up being somebody who can challenge Saito and challenge Kenshin and force Yahiko to come forward. But I would like to see Saito pushed by this new enemy. I would also not like to see him get crushed, but Anyways, thanks for watching this review. If you watched some of it, if you watched all of it, let me know what you think. Yell at me about all the mistakes I made. I will see you guys later. Then next week, I'll do an overview of the series as a whole once I finally catch up and finish the Jinshu arc and the epilogue. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you later.